The Pledge of Allegiance this morning will be led by Talia Simino from Sandrock Elementary, Sebastian Hadley from Ridgeview Elementary, and Giovanni Zarango from East Elementary in Craig, Colorado, and Merritt Crum from North Park Elementary in Walden.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Kohler, please take the roll.
Representatives Becker, Buck, Buckner, Conti, Representative Conti, Corum, Court, Del Grosso, I didn't hear anything.
Absent.
Wait. When did he?
Okay.
Del Grosso excused. Dorr excused. Duran. Present. Everett.
What?
Everett.
Absent.
Absent. Exum. Fields. Fisher. Foote. Garcia. Gardner. Giroux. Janal. Hamner. Holbert. Hollinghorst.
Right at the back.
Humphrey. Joshi. Kagan. Representative Kagan.
Who? Absent.
Absent. Kraft-Tharp.
Let's do right in front of you.
Labuda. Landgraf. Lawrence. Lepsock. Lee. Representative May. McCann. McLaughlin. McNulty. Melton. Mitch Bush. Moreno. Representative Moreno.
Oh, excused.
Excused. Murray.
2 hours.
Navarro. Nordberg excused. Pabon. Peniston. Pedersen. Primavera. Priola. Rankin. Rosenthal. Ryden. Sane. Salazar.
Good morning.
Schaefer. Scott. Singer. Sonnenberg. Representative Sonnenberg.
Worried about there now. Right. Which I don't understand. Right, exactly.
Representative Kagan is present.
I make a way for that.
Parking your car. Representative Stevens. Absent. Swamp. Representative Stevens excused. Zabo. Absent. Just Tyler. I gotcha. Vigil. Waller. Williams. Wilson. Wright. Young. Speaker Ferrandino. Thank you. You as well.
With 59 members present, 5 excused, 1 absent, a quorum is present. You guys can guess who the one is. Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the reading of Journal of March 13, 2014 be dispensed with and be approved as corrected by our wonderful and illustrious Chief Clerk.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes still have it again. You've won twice, Representative Sane. The motion is adopted. Members, before we move into announcements and introductions, as you can tell from all the kids we have in the chamber with us, today is Liberty Day. We're going to have several of the kids read the Declaration of Independence, so we will do that first. So members, please return to your desks so that we can hear the reading of the Declaration of Independence. Okay. How many of those? See, it might be better to half of you over here and half of you over here. Yeah. Okay. And then, oh yeah, you guys are going to just, okay. Well, get in order of, no, don't,
Yeah, well, we're gonna get order this way. So.
I was, here. Okay. You're first, you're second. Come over here next to him. We're going to go move down a little bit down the stairs. Because it's just, there's a lot of you guys. Yeah, get in the right order. Okay. I think we're ready. Okay, guys. You ready? Okay.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of earth the separate of equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes impel them the separation.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed.
But when a long chain of abuses and aspirations pursuing invalidly the same object advances and designs to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is the duty to throw off such government and to provide new guides for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity of which constrains them to alter the formal systems of government. The history of present King of Great Britain is the history of repeated injuries and aspirations, all having in direct object the establishment of absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world.
He has refused to assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws to intimidate and passing immediate importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inalienable to them and formable to tenants only.
He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly, for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise. The state remaining in the meantime exposed to all dangers of invasions from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands.
He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges depend on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He is kept among us in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislators.
He has erected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us.
For protecting them by a mock trial from punishment and for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world.
For imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses,
for abolishing the free system in English laws in our neighboring province, establishing therein an government and declaring its boundaries so as to render as it once example and fit instrument for inducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our valuable laws, and fundamentally the forms of our governments.
for suspending our own legislators and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has obligated government here by declaring us out of protection and waging war against us.
He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, and burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign merchandise to complete the work of death. Desolation and tyranny already began, with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworth the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on high seas, and bear arms against the country, to become the executors of their friends and brethren, or the fall themselves by their hands.
He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has devoured to bring on inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an indistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions.
In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be a ruler of a free people.
Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them, as we, the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends.
We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the restitute of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these United Colonies are, and right of ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may right of do. And for the support of his declaration with the firm alliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Please join me in thanking the children. Very nicely done. We're going to go to announcements, introductions. We'll get to the resolution when we get it from the Senate. Unfortunately, we always are waiting for the Senate. Announcements and introductions. Representative Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd first like to recognize... Mr. Speaker. Apologize, sir. I'd first like to recognize wonderful students brought by the Daughters of American Revolution for Liberty Day from Craig, Colorado. We have quite a contingent here, come all the way from Craig. So thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoy your day. Second, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to recognize a very special guest we have in the chamber today, a teacher from Craig, Colorado. Peabody Energy awarded its Leadership and Education Award for an outstanding literacy coordinator in East Elementary School in Craig. So I'd like to especially recognize Tiffany Trevenin, who's here at some point in the... thank you. But, Mr. Speaker, Ms. Trevenin has a special honor and certainly a privilege to be the daughter of our wonderful and beloved Chief Clerk, Marilyn Edens. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I would like to make a very public thank you to Representative Giroux, whatever her name is. Mr. Speaker, could you, if I may, Mr. Speaker, thank you. I appreciate the fact that when we went to appropriations this morning, Representative Duran presented me with a voodoo donut. And those of you that are familiar with the tradition, when you get a little voodoo donut and the pretzel is stabbed through the heart, then you can do everything you want to do with that donut before you eat it. And I just wanted to thank Representative Duran so much for this because it was a very kind gift, and I'm going to enjoy it immensely. And also, I wanted to remind Appropriations Committee, it just occurred to me that we weren't having Appropriations Committee next week because of the long bell. So I will still be bringing voodoo donuts because I, too, want to share with Representative Duran my feelings and my sense of art. And I really thank you very much.
Representative Duran?
Thank you, Mr.
I don't think that donut's going to make it back to you, Representative Giroux. Ron, can you bring that here?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes, you know, as we all know, there's a little stress in appropriations, a little stress in the Budget Committee. So I just wanted to let Representative Giroux know that I don't want her to have that stress. So she can stab that donut any day. She can rip off the head any day, rip off the leg, so we can all make sure we work together well.
Nicely done. Representative Mitch Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a very special guest this morning in the House, and I didn't even know he was going to be here. Former State Representative Roger Wilson. Woohoo!
Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and welcome, Representative Wilson. I think it was Representative Wilson who started the tradition of the Friday ski report. And so Representative Mitch Bush are here to let you know that we do expect some more snow tonight into tomorrow up in the high country. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the Colorado Association of Ski Towns for hosting a fabulous dinner for us last night.
Representative Mitch Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Hamner. Yes, the Colorado Association of Ski Towns is a fabulous organization, and many of us from this House were there. This weekend, we do expect snow, not tons of snow, but enough to be really fun at Vail, like nowhere on earth, at Beaver Creek, home of the 2015 World Alpine Championships and the Birds of Prey downhill course. And we expect actually a little more snow than those other places at Steamboat, home of great tree skiing and a real family fun atmosphere.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just a reminder to avoid the construction at the tunnel, the crowds that keep you for 7 hours on Interstate 70. For affordable skiing, fun skiing, and easy access, don't forget Monarch. Thank you.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to welcome the kids from Walden Elementary today, here with their escort, Heather Westfall. And it's a long trip to Walden, so thanks for making it and being part of Liberty Day.
Representative Swam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, it is Colorado State Association of Health Underwriters Day at the Capitol here. And many of my fellow health insurance brokers are down here. I was going to introduce some of them, but they appeared to have, oh no, they're still here. So I am going to take a chance, and I just want to recognize four of them over here. We've got Bill Brown, Rachel Brownrigg, and Kendra Johnson. Great folks. I think they're great consumer advocates, especially in the kind of turbulent times that we're going through with trying to implement the Affordable Care Act. So please join me in welcoming them to the House floor. Thank you.
Representative Lawrence.
Oh, no fine.
What?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I just want to thank all the kids who were here from the Liberty Day organization and recognize Andy McKeon, the founder, and Jimmy Sengenberger, the president of Liberty Day, for all the work they do to remind us all that this country didn't come about without some controversy and fighting from our founders, and we need to recognize that and remember it every day. So thank you.
It technically doesn't fall under the rules, but because the kids were so good, I'm going to waive those fines. Representative Singer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members and guests, I want to thank the CU Boulder Staff Council for being here today. We always think about universities having students and faculty, but without the staff to keep the lights on, to keep the computers running, to keep the systems going the way they should, and really the Staff Council is the one who liaison between the employees and the Boulder campus, the university system, and the system administration. They recommend proposals to the administration, they really are designed to improve morale and advocate for the rights of staff, employees. Please, they're at the top and back of the chamber. Please join me in welcoming them today.
Representative Lebsack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if folks don't know by now, I represent North Glen, and we've got a wonderful some wonderful kids here from Westview. I'm not sure if they made it to the gallery yet. Westview in North Glen, Colorado. Thank you for being here, and also kids from Moffett and Jackson. So.
Hi, Dickie Lee.
The Senate hasn't said it. So we have to wait for the Senate. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House proceed out of order for consideration of HJR 1013.
Seeing no objection, the House will proceed out of order for consideration of HJR 1013. Members, also, just so you know, we have two resolutions coming from the Senate, Liberty Day and Scenic Byways. The Senate decided to do thirds and seconds before they did the resolutions. So those will be done later this afternoon. Hopefully, if the Senate ever gets their act together. But for now, we'll do House Joint Resolution 1013. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to House Joint Resolution 1013.
House Joint Resolution 1013 by Representative Wyden, also Senator Aguilar, concerning commemoration of the 150th anniversary of the University of Denver.
Representative Wyden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Joint Resolution 1013 and ask that my fellow DU alums and friends come down, and also that it be read at length.
Whereas, founded on March 5th, 1864, only a few years after the city of Denver was founded, the University of Denver, DU, is the oldest independent university in the Rocky Mountain region of the United States. And whereas the university's 125-acre campus, classified as an arboretum, is home to more than 11,000 students, of which 6,000 are pursuing master's and doctoral degrees. The university offers more than 170 undergraduate programs of study and more than 120 graduate and professional programs. And whereas DU's student body represents all regions of the United States as well as 93 other countries. And whereas U.S. News & World Report's annual college rankings for undergraduate education, released in September 2013, ranked the University of Denver among the nation's top 100 universities at 91st, which ranking is tied with the Colorado School of Mines, Florida State University, Auburn University, University of Massachusetts Amherst, and University of San Diego. And whereas the University of Denver ranks 6th in the nation among doctoral and research institutions in the percentage of undergraduate students participating in study abroad programs. And whereas DU Pioneer Athletics program has captured a record 5 of the last 6 Learfield Sports IAAA Directors' Cups, placing it in the top spot among NCAA Division I non-football schools. And whereas prominent DU alumni include former U.S. Olympic figure skater Michelle Kwan, Peter Morton, founder of Hard Rock Cafe, Roger Birnbaum, CEO and co-founder of Spyglass Entertainment, former U.S. Army Chief of Staff 4-star General George W. Casey, Jr., Peter Coors, chairman of Molson Coors Brewing Company, former U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, David Adkins, the comedian known as Sinbad, and Peter Funt, host of Candid Camera. And whereas the DU campus is home to the Chester M. Alter Arboretum, which features more than 2,300 trees representing more than 240 species and varieties, as well as dozens of shrub species that provide the landscape with year-round beauty. And whereas the university owns 2 observatories, the historic Chamberlain Observatory, which has been monitoring the cosmos since 1894, and the Meyer-Womble Observatory, which sits above 14,000 feet atop Mount Evans, 60 miles west of campus. And whereas DU is home to several institutes and centers dedicated to the public good, such as the Resource Center for Separating and Divorcing Families, the Institute for the Advancement of the American Legal System, the Bridge Project, and the Institute for Human-Animal Connection. And whereas the University of Denver is home to the Sturm College of Law, known for its innovative programs to produce practice-ready lawyers, and the Daniels College of Business, which is the country's 8th oldest business college and is known for its emphasis on business ethics. And whereas DU's Joseph Corbell School of International Studies offers intellectually rigorous programs that prepare students for careers in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. And whereas the university's innovative undergraduate study abroad program, Charrington Global Scholars, sends eligible juniors and seniors to other countries for advanced study at the same cost they would pay for a comparable period on campus. And whereas, with a job placement rate of 95% within 6 months of graduation, the Daniel Felix Ritchie School of Engineering and Computer Science produces graduates ready to excel in highly productive technical and scientific teams. And whereas, over the past 25 years, the DU campus has been transformed, largely due to the efforts and generosity of DU's 16th Chancellor, Daniel Ritchie, who guided the university from 1989 to 2005. And whereas, since 1997, DU has opened 19 new academic, residential, and administrative buildings, remarkable growth in preparation for the educational needs of the 21st century. And whereas, Robert D. Coombe has served as the University of Denver's 17th Chancellor since July 2005. During his 9 years in the post, he has overseen the institution's academic renaissance, its most successful fundraising campaign ever, the launch of a groundbreaking initiative in STEM, education, and the successful hosting of the first presidential debate of the 2012 election. And whereas Coombe came to the university in 1981 as a faculty member in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. Since then, he has served the institution in a variety of leadership positions, first as department chair, later as dean of what was then the Division of Natural Sciences, Mathematics, and Engineering, and from 2001 to 2005 as provost. Coombe will retire from the institution in the summer of 2014. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, recognize the many contributions and achievements of the University of Denver as we celebrate and observe its 150th anniversary. Be it further resolved that a copy of this joint resolution be sent to Governor John Hickenlooper, Chancellor Robert Coombe, Provost Craig Kvistad, Vice Chancellor and Chief Marketing Officer Kevin Carroll, Vice Chancellor of University Advancement Scott Lumpkin, Associate Vice Chancellor Christine Cecil, Chairman of the Board of Trustees Trig Mirren, Chairman-elect of the Board of Trustees Doug Scrivener, University Counsel Paul Chan, Faculty Senate President Scott Luteniger, Executive Director of Communication for University Advancement Julie Sharon, and Executive Director of Conference Events and Special Programs Kathy Grieve.
Representative, well, actually, you know, I thought it was funny that none of you were mentioned as distinguished alumni as you stand there.
We will be. We will be.
We'll see about that. Representative Ryden.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's still early. It's still early. On the 200th anniversary, I'm sure we'll all be listed on that list. Members, go ahead and sit down. I know some of our folks have something they may want to say. I just wanted to say a couple words. And as I was thinking this morning, I don't know if I really want to admit this, but 50 years ago, DU was celebrating its centennial, and I was finishing my freshman year there. So time does fly, and it's been fun. At that time, I think DU could have been, you know, described as a cozy little campus in South Denver, kind of a family atmosphere. Our business school was downtown, our law school was downtown. We just had the small campus there in South Denver, and we pretty much stayed on campus. Hardly anyone even had a car, so I mean, things have certainly changed. I was involved in mass communications, the DU Clarion, the KVDU radio, and I did meet my future and current husband there, Jerome, and he was editor of the DU Clarion in 1968 when a lot of exciting things were happening on campus. But today, I think the campus has just been, you know, totally transformed and is really poised for the next century and a half of progress and of educating students and preparing them to be really productive citizens. And I really do appreciate the current motto that they're using, which is that DU is a private university devoted to the public good. And I think that really describes what DU is all about. So my recollections, and I welcome my other colleagues to give a few memories of their own.
Representative Ryden, it is a great campus in the best House district in the state, so. Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would just like to echo Representative Ryden, and it's transformed quite substantially since I was there and graduated in 1997 with my Master's in International Management. And, you know, just, you know, the new athletics center and the new business school, the new law school, it's just tremendous. And I just wish we had all those things when I was there. But, you know, and just sort of also echo some of the great programs that they have. One in particular brings in high school students from around the region for robotics competitions, and they do that also in the athletic center. And it's just really absolutely amazing to see these high school students put together these robots that do all sorts of things like throw basketballs and basketball hoops and things like that. And so really, not just excelling academically on campus, but really, playing a role to encourage academic excellence around the region. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Foote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much, Representative Ryden, for bringing this. I actually credit DU with restoring my love of learning. I actually went to CU Law School, and it's a great school. I enjoyed it, but I would say that after I graduated from CU Law School, the last thing I wanted to do was pick up anything and read it. And for anyone in the room that's gone to law school, maybe you can identify. Maybe you can't. Maybe it was just me that I just didn't excel. But it was tough. And I graduated from law school, got my job as a deputy DA, and about 4 years later decided to go to DU and get a master's degree at the Corbell School of International Studies. And for no other reason than I just wanted to do it. And the only reason I could do it was because, and I know that DU is famous for this, but their flexibility in their night classes and the part-time status that the students can do. I went to night classes and really enjoyed it. The professors were top-notch. The subject matter was just something that I loved to learn. And I feel fortunate to have been able to have that opportunity to go to DU at the time. So I really do appreciate everything the university does, particularly the part-time programs for night students, and I hope that it continues for the next 150 years.
Representative Waller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I want to tell you about one of the finer moments in my lifetime. I was a young captain in the United States Air Force back at Beale Air Force Base in Northern California. And I decided that I wanted an opportunity to go back to school. I wanted to go to law school. But I'll tell you, members, I didn't do so well in my undergrad degree. I was one of those guys that, majored in things other than academic pursuits. We'll just say that.
That's shocking news.
Well, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, I didn't have the best experience in my undergrad career, and I went and got a master's degree while I was in the military, and then gained some confidence from that and decided I wanted to give law school a try. But I didn't know if I'd be able to get in. I went and took a bar prep course, studied hard, or took an LSAT prep course, studied hard for the LSAT, took that, and then I sent off my applications to law schools. And I only applied to a couple of law schools because my wife and I were going to be moving to Colorado Springs, where she would continue her career in the military, and I would get out and go full-time to law school if I were to be accepted. So I can tell you, I remember the day my wife and I are standing in the foyer of our house in Yuba City, California, when the letter came that said, "Congratulations, you've been accepted to law school." That was a defining moment in my lifetime, getting that opportunity to go to law school. It was such an incredible experience and opportunity that I knew I was going to get to embark on just by getting to go to law school. And I remember showing up the first day and walking in. There was, at the old campus at 17th and Monaco, there was a room there that had the old law library. And it was the old law library where they had all of these, 100-year-old books. And I can remember walking into that library for the first time and just drinking it in, drinking that experience in. I'll tell you, for most people that go to law school, it's an experience. It's a tough experience. It's difficult, and people, don't necessarily enjoy it all that much. I'm not that guy. I appreciated every single second and moment I was there because I know not everybody gets the opportunity to do that. Now, I didn't make too many mistakes while I was in law school. Well, voting for Joe Salazar for body president or whatever it was, president of. Maybe I would reconsider that decision now. But what an absolutely wonderful experience. I appreciate the the practicality with which they teach law at DU. I got to be a member of the student legal program while I was there, and I went off and defended people in their court cases. And actually, the Dean Emeritus, Dean Yegi, was my advisor doing this, and so I had this license to practice as a student lawyer. And we went in and we handled like dog bite cases and shoplifting cases and things like that. And I remember going into court one day, and I'm sitting there and I'm kind of talking to the client. Again, I'm a student. I'm nervous as heck to be in front of a judge. I'd only done it once or twice before. I get a call from Dean Yegi. Mark, my dog got out. I'm chasing him around the neighborhood trying to find him. You can handle this on your own. Go right ahead. You can take care of it. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, there's absolutely no way this is going to work. I'm not even licensed to practice law in the state of Colorado. But in putting that sort of faith and confidence in me and letting me know that I was going to be able to move forward and be successful that day was something meaningful to me, and I was incredibly appreciative of that. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention my favorite law professor while I was at DU College of Law, Karen Steinhauser. I don't know if many of you know her. She comes down to the Capitol quite often and testifies, but I became a DA because of Karen Steinhauser. She convinced me that that's where my heart lied and that's what I needed to do. And I'll never forget the words that she gave me. I always thought I'd be a defense attorney, believe it or not. But Karen said to me, as I was in my third year of law school, she said, Mark, I think you'd be an outstanding DA. You know why? Because you have empathy for the other side. And that's the kind of stuff. That's the kind of knowledge and practical learning that you get out of DU, and that's why I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity to go there.
Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess that's as low as it goes, huh? Have that step stool, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, I know. Maybe I should just sit down. Mr. Speaker, I had one day in my life that I considered to be the proudest day of my life, as well as one of the proudest days of my life, as well as one of the saddest days. And it was the day that I received my acceptance to DU Law School. My grandfather had passed away just a few weeks prior to that, and I know that he would have been really proud of that accomplishment. And we were approaching the anniversary of the death of my other grandfather, who was a janitor at DU Law School. And so that was a very mixed emotion day, but my family celebrated it quite a bit. I was the very first in my family to go to college, very first to go to law school. And that moment triggered just a life change for me, going to law school and just experiencing it. And I have to say, I agree with Representative Waller that I loved every single bit of it. Even when I found out that he voted for me as student body president, I happened to lose, and I'm attributing it to his vote and his endorsement. But it was a grand experience. I had a professor, Ved Nanda. Many of you know, in fact, many people know him the world over as one of the foremost international law experts. I was able to participate in the student clinic where I represented poor folks in eviction proceedings. I didn't represent anybody on any dog bite cases, but in mediations. And that was a very powerful experience for me to participate in that at a grassroots level. And I came away from that law school experience with this very enormous weight on my back, because I thought to myself, I'm the very first person to do this in my family, and there's much that's expected now. You know, I have this knowledge that it costs a lot of money to pay to get, but I have this knowledge, and so what am I going to do with it? How am I going to use this knowledge to help benefit humanity? And it's been an everyday, constant struggle to make sure that I fight for what is right. And that's what I learned at DU Law School. because it was a law school of not just rich kids, and I think Representative Waller would know this. It wasn't just rich kids who were there. There were a lot of grassroots kids there. There were a lot of broke kids there who happened to get accepted into a fine, fine law school and who came away with a law degree and a huge amount of responsibility. And that's what I walked away from DU Law School with. I walked away with that in my heart. And so it was a life-changing experience, and I wish that everybody here would experience it. I mean, there's some people here who should go to law school. You're extremely bright. You're extremely passionate. You're, Representative Zabel, right there. It'd be amazing to see you at DU Law School. I don't know how you'd mix it up if you got there, but you know, I attribute this life-changing experience to DU. Thank you very much.
Representative Everett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Ryden, for bringing this. I need to take this off the Szabo Salazar setting, though. There we go. It's a little bit better. What can I say about my DU law school experience? I graduated a semester early in 2000. Part of the great thing about DU is it allows the flexibility for people that, you know, were trying to pursue a career with the night program that Representative Foote talked about, to actually complete their law degree, and actually, in my case, you know, actually completed early. With that and having a night program, and I was actually a day student that would do night classes. I don't know if there's anybody that would figure that out from me being here in the legislature, that maybe night classes work a little bit better for me. But
that explains it.
But the benefit of having the night program is you actually had adjunct professors that actually practiced, so you didn't have someone that had basically graduated from Yale Law School and then went into academia and had no real-world experience. You could actually get practical knowledge from a lot of these professors, which I think, you know, being able to apply that immediately was very beneficial. Also, while I was on the Student Bar Association, I actually did run for Student Bar Association president. There seems to be a trend going on here. I lost by 6 votes, and it was a very good political lesson because I was actually running against a Democrat, and they bussed other people in from other law schools. So, you know, it was my first introduction to the reality of politics here in Colorado. You know, and also the hanging Chaz, you know, losing by 6 votes. And, you know, I got Bo Pray's legal team in to try to help me out, but that didn't work. I learned another political lesson also while I was at DU Law School. When I was on the Student Bar Association, before I ran for Student Bar Association president, we saw we were competing with CU law students 93% of the time to get jobs. And CU law students, because they had a high bar passage rate, were getting these jobs. We found out that the GPA curve, there's a huge disparity between the GPA curves, because in law school, because they're lawyers that don't know how to do math, they have GPA curves. At CU, it was a B average, so an 84. At DU, it was basically a C plus, B minus. And the registrar was like, no, we don't have a problem with this. We send employers a 3-page letter explaining our GPA curve. And I'm like, when they're getting 300 resumes, they're not going to read a 3-page letter, you know, to explain the GPA curve. So we actually got it raised from a C plus, B minus to around a B. I think it was a 2.85 to a 3.15, which, you know, in all honesty, that was really self-serving because I figured there's no way you could fail out at that point. So I was able to complete my degree. But going through that process, dealing with the faculty senate, and sort of negotiating a deal and people with egos having to save face. I think it was a good political lesson on trying to, you know, work through something and get a coalition together to get that passed, because we had to get it passed through the faculty senate. And we know how slowly things work when anything has Senate associated with its name. But overall, my experience was good, and obviously when we actually have time to, in the real world, to earn a living, you know, the DU law degree has been invaluable to me. And thank you again, Representative Ryden, for bringing this resolution, and I really appreciate my experience at DU. Thanks.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And many of you know that I'm actually a CU alum, so I'm ready to have a long, vigorous debate about this resolution and introduce dozens and dozens of amendments, which I'm sure will not fit under this bill title. No, in all actuality, though, you also know that I was raised by a single mother. My mom started her collegiate career at Greeley, but then didn't finish. But while I was in high school, went to the Women's College at DU. And so the Women's College at DU is great for working women because they allow women who have jobs, who have families, to be able to go on and continue their education and hopefully be able to then turn that into a better job and a better life for their families. And so while she was doing that, I was in high school, and she was actually a big inspiration to me for when I went to college and really helped me see exactly what to be prepared for. So I went to come down and speak on behalf of my mother and the Women's College at DU and say that it is a great program at that school, even though it's not at CU. It's all right. So thank you, Representative Wright, for having this.
Representative Duran.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And I rise in support of the resolution today. I love hearing the stories about law school. I actually didn't go to DU Law School. I went to CU Law School. It was a long time ago, and I had the pleasure of serving as president of the Student Bar Association, and my good friend, Representative Pabon, was president of the class. And so, but long before CU, I went to the University of Denver. And I studied public policy and Spanish, and had a double major in public policy and Spanish. And so really from a perspective of being an advocate for so many different issues, it was amazing to be in those classes with people like Peter Groff and Governor Lamb and Richard Caldwell and debate so many crucial issues to the state of Colorado. They really pushed me outside of my box and outside of my comfort zone when it came to different issues. And I think as a result of some of those classes that happened when I was at the University of Denver, it's made me a better legislator as well now in this role. But I was recently thinking about how much I cherish my experience at the University of Denver, because if it wasn't for many of the scholarships, merit scholarships that I received from the University of Denver, I would have never been able to go there. And I attended the play Just Like Us not too long ago that, as we know, Helen Thorpe wrote, and because of the support of Daniel Ritchie, it was shown at the Denver Center for Performing Arts. And for those of you that don't know what that book is about or what that play is about, it's about 4 Latina girls who go to the University of Denver, 2 of them who are documented and 2 of them who are not. And I remember watching the play and just feeling so much like I remember what those days were like and related to it on so many different levels. And I just want to thank the University of Denver for all of the work that they do to make sure that they have a diversified student body, and thank them so much too for the scholarship money and the grants that I was able to receive, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to go there. So thank you.
Any further conversation? Seeing none, is there any objection to taking a voice vote? Seeing none, we'll proceed in that manner. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. HJR 1013 is passed. Representative Riden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I move that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors to HJR 1013.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be made co-sponsors of HJR 1013. Representative Riden for some introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have some folks here from DU, and I've lost my list. So someone took my notes, but if you all would, where are they now? Oh, they're down here. So we have Kathy Grieve and Julie Kyra, Chrissy Cecil, and Kevin Carroll. And they are all with the University of Denver administration, and we're sorry that Chancellor Coombe couldn't be here today. A sudden emergency came up and kept him from coming today, but please join me in welcoming our folks from DU.
Thank you, Representative Riden. We'll go back to announcements introduction so we can do a tribute. Representative McLaughlin and quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is the 25th anniversary of the Colorado Historic Scenic Byways Commission, and Representative Cormie and Senator Nicholson and Schwartz have already given a tribute to them in the Senate, and Representative Cormie and I are here to talk briefly. And first of all, I'd like to announce the members of the commission which are present here today, and I'd like you to give them a the House give them a thank you for their service on the Scenic Byways Commission. Would you please stand?
Representative Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In recognition of the 25th anniversary of the Colorado Scenic and Historic Byways Program, and for the Commission's Byway Boards and community's dedication in guiding travelers to experience and be inspired by Colorado's treasured places, the program provides recreational, educational, and economic benefits to Colorado and visitors within the system of 25 outstanding touring routes, of which 11 are designated as America byways, giving Colorado the most nationally designed byways. And as you all know, my good colleague, Representative McLaughlin, and I share 9 counties of southwest Colorado, where many of these are located. I will also remind you that there's a lot of beautiful scenery between here and those scenic byways. So when you have a chance this summer, thank the Commission for all the work they've done, and just go out and enjoy some of the beauty that Colorado has to offer.
Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd also like to add to those remarks. Representative Quorum and I are privileged to represent Southwest Colorado, some of the most beautiful parts of the state. We believe that together we certainly represent the 2 most beautiful scenic districts in mountain districts in the state of Colorado. I have, in my own district, I have 2. The Alpine Loop, which is constructed in the 19th century, was one of the first 3 original scenic byways, and it was constructed to carry ore from Silverton at Lake City and Ouray, also 3 cities still in my district. Also, the scenic byway is my favorite scenic byway, one that I deal with daily, is the San Juan Skyway, which connects Durango, Silverton, Ouray, and Telluride, which is in Representative Quorum's district. You had a handout on your materials on your desk today. Take a look at it. The importance of the scenic byways to the Colorado economy, to the people of the western slope, and the people of the eastern slope, which also have scenic byways, is critically important. It gives us a lesson to all go out, take a look at the beautiful state that we live in, and appreciate it every day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just to one-up my colleague here, you may, in my district, go to Grand Mesa Byway and San Juan Skyway, Trail of the Ancients, Uniweep, and West Elk Loop. So please do so.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representatives. Representative Vigil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Also, there is a scenic we have also a historic byways in our communities. It's the Sagre de Cristo Heritage area down there, and we also have scenic highways, which is the Caminos Antiguos road that goes around in a circle around Castilla, Conejos, and Alamosa, and we really love our heritage area as well. So the San Luis Valleys also have a beautiful heritage area, so please come on down one of these days and enjoy those scenic areas in our communities.
Representative Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can't let these Southwest Colorado guys get by with this. Northwest Colorado has a lot of area, a lot of roads you can drive for a long way. Two that I particularly like, 2 scenic byways, the Dinosaur Diamond Prehistoric Byway, which loops through Utah and through Rangeley, Colorado. In fact, if you actually drive on this road, you will encounter the only stoplight in Rio Blanco County, which happens to be in Rangeley. I'm not sure they really need it, but it's there. So, and there's another wonderful drive between Meeker and Yampa as the endpoints across what's called the Flat Tops, a very active road with lots of old mines and things to see. Byways are really important to tourism in western Colorado. As a member of the Tourism Board, we promote and talk about byways quite a bit. So thank you very much to the Commission for what you're doing.
And members, I know you want to speak, but this is a tribute. I allowed members to speak, and I really shouldn't, because tributes are not debatable. They're just to be presented. So we are going to move to our next order of business. Second reading of bills. Representative Kagan. Heard the motion, seeing no objection, the House resolve itself as a committee of the whole for consideration of general orders. Representative Kagan will take the chair.
Committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for reading a bill at length. Committee amendments will not be read unless requested, as they are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads and not read unless requested. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the Majority Leader. The coat rule is relaxed. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1282, House Bill 1267, and Senate Bill 119 until the end of the calendar.
House Bills 1282, 1267, and which was the third one? 119 will be, Senate Bill 119 will be laid over by request of the Majority Leader. Mr. Kohler.
Mr. Chair, I have one more.
Madam Majority Leader.
Is she coming? No. Oh, here she comes.
Okay. Majority Leader withdraws her request. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1285.
House Bill 1285, Representative Ryan Alston Aguilar, concern requirement that professional tax preparer provide certain disclosures to client when preparing tax documents for the client.
Representative Ryden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1285 and the Committee on Business, Labor, Economic, and Workforce Development report.
To the Business, Labor, Economic, and Workforce Development report, Representative Ryden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, House Bill 1285 is about requiring disclosures from paid tax preparers for their clients. And it's a pretty simple disclosure requiring contact information, who the person might call if they run into issues, what kinds of services are offered, etc. There are 3 groups who are already regulated by the state who the committee report is exempting, and those are certified public accountants, attorneys at law, and enrolled agents, and individuals employed by a local, state, or federal government agency. The committee report also allows for a tax service company, such as an H&R Block, to provide the disclosure rather than requiring it of each and every individual employee who is doing tax preparation. I urge a yes vote on the committee report.
Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Ryden, I apologize, I didn't have a chance to ask this question in committee, but after we passed this amendment that you just addressed with exempting CPAs, attorneys at law, and individuals employed by government agencies, can you describe who's left at this point?
Representative Ryden.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Anyone else who does paid tax preparation?
Representative Wright.
Okay, so looking at the fiscal note, it's my understanding, based on staff's assumptions, that for the Department of Law, currently the Consumer Protection Unit for the Attorney General's office, on average, receives approximately 10 complaints about tax preparers each year. How many of those do you know are from the pool that we're now exempting?
Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not have that information.
Representative Wright.
Okay, so Representative Wyden, I guess, and members, my concern with this bill at this point is that we don't know, number one, how many of the AG's office current complaints are now exempted. We don't know what segment of the tax preparer population is going to be regulated by this bill. And I would be one of the individuals if I wanted to go out and prepare someone's taxes that would be covered by this. So if I comply, if I, number one, find out that I need to file this form, and I comply, 10 years down the road, 2, 5, 10 years down the road, the individual who I prepared this form or prepared taxes for and gave this form to, even if I gave them the form, they come back 10 years from now and say that they never received the form from me. How am I to know that I'm supposed to keep these records? Are there any safeguards or disclosures to tax preparers currently? Representative Wyden, maybe you could answer this, that would tell me as the tax preparer that I need to make sure that I maintain these records for a period of time. And should we have in this bill a statute of limitations, if you will, for how long I need to keep the form on file? I may not be getting an answer on that question, Mr. Chair. So those are my concerns. Without, I don't believe we have an amendment, but without that amendment, I just would ask for a no vote on this bill.
Any further discussion on the report of the Business, Labor, Economic and Workforce Development? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Business, Labor, Economic and Workforce Development Report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The Business, Labor, Economic and Workforce Development Report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Wyden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is a basic consumer protection effort to make sure that folks who are having their taxes done by someone that they are paying provides them with just some basic information about their contact info, what kinds of services they offer, how they calculate their fees, and what to expect in terms of services if they should have to have an audit or something like that. It's a very modest proposal. It's something that came to me from folks in the Piton Foundation who do provide free tax services for elderly and low-income folks. And they had noticed that people were coming to them who were quite confused and concerned about previous experiences with tax preparers. And so this bill basically just gives us the opportunity for people to know how to get a hold of their tax preparer when they need additional help and where to turn in case they do have an issue with the IRS. I urge a yes vote on House Bill 1285.
Representative Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, that was a no vote on this bill in committee. I think that we need to take a close look at what we are considering as consumer protection. This bill would allow a consumer to come back and file a complaint against a tax preparer, one of those who is apparently not exempted from this bill. How consumers would be able to tell one from another who is or is not exempted, I'm not really sure. But if they actually had their taxes prepared by someone who isn't exempted, then what it would allow that consumer to do is come back and file a complaint against that tax preparer. So how would that consumer be made whole? If the tax preparer could not document that he or she gave the form, then that person, that tax preparer, would pay, I believe, a $100 fee to the state. There's no consumer protection here. It's punishment for not following the rules right, or potential punishment for not being able to document that you did follow the rules right. So as Representative Wright has pointed out, What time period does the tax preparer have to maintain this document to prove that he or she gave it to the consumer? There is no consumer protection here. All this is another requirement for some providers of tax preparation services to provide a disclosure form, which is fine. But then if they can't prove that they gave that disclosure form to the consumer for an indefinite period of time, apparently they would be subject to a fine. I ask for a no vote.
Is there any Representative Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, we heard this in the Business Committee, and we had support from the Colorado Fiscal Institute, the Piton Foundation. We had 9 to 5. We had Together Colorado, and we also had the Colorado Lobby on this. And there were some conversations around our accountants who are not under the law, under the statute, just because they belong to a nonprofit organization, does that make them accountable? And not necessarily. And while we have organizations, nonprofit organizations that represent CPAs and public accountants, there's no accountability just because you belong to a nonprofit organization. I believe that this is a good consumer protection bill. And the reason for that is, too, is when we enter into tax season, there might be a lot of people out there who may not be as qualified as they think they are or we are. And there might be some fraud. We think there is some vulnerable populations out there that this will help. And so I would ask you for a yes vote.
Representative Zeba.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, you know, colleagues, what I found interesting in committee was there was a question asked about these groups of people and how vulnerable they are. And the question was, are they already covered under different parts of law? And the answer was yes. So if this is violated, this type of what they're calling a fraud, or people are not being treated right when they're getting their taxes done because they don't have contact information on the tax preparer.
Thank you.
There are already laws in this state and federally that protect these people. Do we need to put another layer of regulation and law on small business? Or do we need to just enforce the laws that we have on the books? To me, that would make the most sense. We have a bunch of laws in this state, and we need to enforce them. That's the only way they work. I would ask for a no vote.
Representative Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's approach this in a different direction. Let's say that I'm a tax preparer and I am required to offer this disclosure form and I don't. The intention of the disclosure form is to give the consumer some way to follow up with the tax preparer and have that contact information. Okay, but what if the tax preparer who is not exempt, that rare person who isn't exempt from this requirement, doesn't provide the disclosure form? How is that person, how is that consumer any better equipped to find that person and file a complaint so that that person pays a penalty to the state? Again, there's nothing that makes the consumer whole in this. There's also the question of, does this provide any safety for the consumer, any better protection from things like fraud or poorly reported taxes? Someone who doesn't fill out the tax reform form correctly for the consumer. No. There's nothing for the consumer to go back against the tax preparer who does or does not provide the disclosure form. There's nothing about this bill that allows that consumer to go back and file a complaint and get their taxes corrected. All it is a penalty for not being able to prove that you didn't give the disclosure form. This is not consumer protection. I ask for a no vote.
Is there any further discussion of House Bill 1285? Representative Ryden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is a good bill. Please vote yes.
Seeing no further discussion of House Bill 1285, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1285. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. House Bill 1285 is passed. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 102.
Senate Bill 102 by Senator Ulibarri, also Representatives Gardner and Rosenthal, concerning the addition of employment positions held at financial institutions with circumstances under which an employer may use consumer credit information for employment purposes.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 102. There is no committee report.
Representative Lebsok.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question for one of the two sponsors. Last year, I was a co-sponsor to a bill, I believe, that Representative Fisher ran, that I thought was a very good bill. And the current concern that I have with this one, or question rather, is I was told that this was a cleanup bill to what we did last year, but it seems that this adds circumstances under which an employer may use consumer credit information, and I want to understand that a little bit more, because I'm under the impression and belief that folks shouldn't be discriminated against because their credit report might be a 650 instead of a 750. And so how is this a cleanup bill, and what does this bill do in respect to the very good bill that we passed last year?
Representative Gardner.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have no idea, Representative Lebsok, about your bill last year and whether it was a very good bill or not. This is a very good bill. This is a good government bill, Representative Lebsok. And in fact, it was not altogether clear that this bill was necessary other than by clarification. When we did the credit bill, which may be the bill you're referring to, I'm not really sure. The intent was to ensure that employers who were employing people that handled money and financial things could do a credit report, because one of the things that makes an employee a risk is if they have debts, if they don't handle their own finances properly. And so what 8-2-126 describes is that you can use this credit information if the credit information or that data is substantially related to the employee's current or potential job. And goes on to say, evaluated because the position constitutes executive or management personnel or officers, employees, professional staff, so forth. That was probably intended to be in banking, but the Department of Labor and Employment, as I understand it, had some concern about whether or not those people were actually covered. Hence, the Bankers Association and others, credit unions, so forth, came back and said, we need to add this, is with a bank or financial institution, so we don't have any doubt about that. It is a cleanup in that sense, that we think the initial bill intended to cover those kinds of employees. There was an expression of, we're not sure we got them. This bill makes sure that they are there. And if you'd like to argue, Representative Lebsok, that we should not cover with credit reporting and a consideration of that for employment for the bank teller that has hundreds of thousands of dollars going through his or her hands on a daily basis, I welcome you to do so.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize. I wasn't really listening to Representative Gardner. I usually listen intently to everything he has to say. I was consulting with a colleague about the bill. So just to respond to Representative Lebsok's questions, the sort of the upshot and genesis of this bill, or in the why we're bringing it, is because the Attorney General had interpreted the statute, the bill that we passed last year, to where a bank or financial institution would be able to print out or somehow obtain financial data for an individual to consider hiring, but they wouldn't be able to use it for the hiring purposes. So what this bill is going to do is basically use that same phrase, is with a bank or a financial institution, and put that in another section, literally a few lines down in the statute, and then that way to use that, to put it there is to clarify. And that was the purpose of the bill last session, is to, first of all, to bar use of any financial data when hiring, however, to exempt banks or financial institutions. And so what this is going to do is just to make that eminently clear more than it is now.
Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this is actually a pretty important bill, and it does change a little bit what the bill did last year. I think it was Senate Bill 18, the Employment Opportunity Act of 2013. And I think I heard just now repeated at the well, Representative Gardner kind of reiterating some of the mythology about credit reporting, consumer credit reporting, and a person's qualifications to hold a job, even if they deal with money. The data show that there's no correlation between consumer credit scores and someone's trustworthiness or qualifications to do a job. That's why we ran the bill last year, and I was proud to run the bill. I think it was a good job creation bill. It allowed people to try to. It helped people recover from the economic downturn when their consumer credit scores may have been severely damaged. And before the enactment of the bill, people were being discriminated against in the employment process based on their credit scores. And so the research and all the work that we did on that bill last year shows that there is no correlation between consumer credit information and a person's trustworthiness or their propensity to steal, or even if they have got a lot of money in their hands. My intent of the bill was to not include the line workers in a financial institution, but certainly I think it's appropriate for those who have a fiduciary responsibility over the operations of a financial institution to be creditworthy. But you know, I have spoken with the Senate sponsor of Senate Bill 18 last year and also of Senate Bill 102 this year. He assures me that this doesn't really change the intent of the bill that we ran last year, and so I'm not either opposing or supporting this bill this year. I'll be a no vote, but you know, I just you know, it makes me uncomfortable that we're taking a little bit of a step back here.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate the bill sponsors bringing Senate Bill 102 to the floor. I think the best you can do as far as economic and employment opportunities is the best thing for the state of Colorado. I would like to congratulate Representative Rosenthal on his choice of attire today. He did not wear the orange shirt with the turquoise jacket. And Representative Duran and I had a conversation about that. I was wearing a very nice olive plaid jacket last week, and she said it was the same color as Representative Rosenthal's turquoise jacket. And it wasn't, and maybe we could take up on a collection to help him, but whatever the case, I'll be a yes on the bill.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Lepsalk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it wasn't my intention to pick a fight. I just have some concerns with this bill. If you have an entry-level clerk starting her or his first job, and she or he might have a 650 credit rating, I do not believe that an employer should hold that against that person, and that shouldn't prevent that young person to get that entry-level banking clerk position. And so I'm still a little confused on the intent of the bill. And so at this point, I'm going to be a no, because I haven't, those questions haven't been fully answered to me. Hopefully between now and third reading, I might understand a little bit more about the bill, but I'm a no at this point.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And normally I'm against any type of barriers for employment, but I do believe that this is good policy. I believe that when you are dealing with financial institutions, when you're dealing with money and money handling, I think that that we should make this this exemption from last year's bill to allow for financial institutions to be able to perform these checks and make sure that they're protecting their best interests. So I want to thank the bill sponsors for bringing this bill forward, and I will definitely be a yes and urgent I vote for this bill.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 102. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 102 is passed. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 137.
Senate Bill 137 by Senator John Ossoff, Representative McNulty, concerning certification of workers' compensation insurance forms.
Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move Senate Bill 137. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of Senate Bill 137? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 137. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 137 is passed. Mr. Kohler, 50 seconds for the record. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1290.
House Bill 1290 by Representative Becker, also Senator Roberts, concerning addition to the definition of other outlet to enable the operation of a remotely located telepharmacy outlet.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1290 and the committee report from Public Health Care and Human Services.
To the committee report, Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did a strike below, and it was passed, I believe, unanimously. The amendment further it defined telepharmacy, and it took out any reference to the ownership of a telepharmacy.
Is there any further discussion on the report of the Committee on Public Health Care and Human Services? Seeing none, the question is the passage, the adoption of the report of the Committee on Public Health Care and Human Services. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Committee on Public Health Care and Human Services is adopted. Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Telepharmacy uses telecommunications technology to provide pharmacy care to patients at a distance. It's been adopted in about 15 to 20 other states. It will provide greater access to pharmacy care in very rural areas of Colorado. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Vigil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In rural Colorado, we have a lot of problems with getting prescriptions taken care of, and this bill would certainly go a long ways to help those rural folks get their prescriptions in a timely manner. So I ask for an aye vote on this bill.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for the bill sponsor. A couple years ago, Representative Young and I ran a bill, House Bill 1281, and it had to do with regional care collaboratives. And the whole idea of it, for those of you that are not familiar, is there's seven regional care collaboratives, easy for me to say, across the state. And the whole point of 1281 is to try to create a better environment for delivering care, patient-centered care, to Medicaid clients and also those that are in need. So what I'm wondering is there any connection with your bill and implementing changes within the regional care collaboratives connected with 1281, particularly now with the pilot project that we have going on in Grand Junction?
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Giroux, for your question. I don't think it has any impact on that whatsoever.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, if that's the case, Representative Becker, I think you're missing a huge opportunity, because while Representative Vigil is absolutely right, because we need this to help deliver care to regional areas, the fact that this won't implement or won't have an impact on the regional care collaboratives and delivery of care to those that need it most in the Medicaid field, you know, that level of patient-centered care that we need to be taken care of, I think you're missing a huge opportunity. I know I met with the pharmaceutical folks yesterday. Senator Hodge and I had a meeting with him yesterday, and there is a movement afoot. I don't know whether it's because HCPF doesn't want to engage with the Medicaid community and trying to help delivery of care, but I would encourage you, I don't know who your Senate sponsor is, but I would encourage you to look into that. And I would support some joining with the Medicaid populations, the RICOs, and your telehealth or telepharmacy, because I think the pharmacists want to do it. HCPF just doesn't seem to want to get off the dime.
Representative Becker.
Thanks, Representative Giroux. I'd be happy to talk to you about that more. It's an interesting idea.
Representative Corum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also, I don't co-sponsor a lot of bills around here, but I think this is one that is definitely a bill that works for some of the remote areas of southwest Colorado where medical care is far between. Many times it's 85 to 90 miles to a doctor or to a hospital. So I think this is just another tool in the toolbox that will be beneficial. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1290. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 1290 passes. Mr. Corum, Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 89.
Senate Bill 14089 by Senators Schwartz and John, also Representative Fisher, Szabo, Vigil, concerning the prohibition for the state to enter into an agreement for a payment in lieu of taxes.
Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Corum, I think you should keep your day job. And I move, Mr. Chairman, I move Senate Bill 89 and the report of the Finance Committee.
To the Finance Committee report, Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance Committee report was truly just a technical cleanup of some drafting errors that the bill drafter caught after it had come over from the Senate, and I just ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Representative Corum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually do support this bill, but I would remind my good friend Representative Fisher that in southwest Colorado, day jobs are few and far between.
Is there any further discussion of the Finance Committee report? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of the Finance Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The Finance Committee report is adopted. Representative Fisher to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this is a fairly simple bill. It came out of the Capital Development Committee and was the impetus for the bill was an issue that we had last fall with the purchase of a state-owned building. And we wanted to clarify in statute that the state of Colorado is a tax-exempt entity, and we're not obligated to pay a property tax and other types of assessments. But this bill clarifies that the state can enter into a negotiation to pay some or part of the payment in lieu of taxes, just not up to a full 100% of the taxes that a non-tax exempt entity would pay. And so I ask for an aye vote. It's a simple Capital Development Committee bill that clarifies current practice. Thank you.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Threw you for just a second, didn't I? Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I wanted to speak to this bill. This is one of those that simple bill is in the eye of the beholder oftentimes, Representative Fisher. I've got three problems with Senate Bill 14089. And as Representative Fisher accurately pointed out, this was to clean up an issue on the purchase of property, which is the purchase of private property by the government. And then what do we do about the property taxes thereon? First problem I have with this bill is the government using public tax dollars to purchase private property. That's just an issue, but we won't get into that one in detail. Second of all, Representative Fisher pointed out that the state is exempt from property taxes, and that is true. But the term PILT says payment in lieu of taxes, which means instead of or in place of. So the state is not exempt from that particular issue. The state can pay PILT funding, which is the third point. According to the bill, the Colorado Department of Parks and Wildlife indeed does pay PILT, payment in lieu of taxes, because of their purchasing of private property and putting it into use as habitat protection and recreation, which is another way of saying government ownership of private property. Now, the biggest issue that I have with this, as all three of them tie together, is when you take those properties off the tax roll, you are taking dollars away from schools, which I happen to have a big interest in. A private entity has to pay taxes on that private property. So whether it's a building, whether it's property, whatever it may be, it's public tax dollars that's being taken away when the government buys it. When the state uses public money to purchase private property, it should pay PILT. Now granted, and as Representative Fisher pointed out to me in the hearings in Finance, the option is in the bill for the government to negotiate up to 100%, which would be 99.99, kind of like Dove soap or whatever that is, that amount of dollars. Now, folks, I don't know about you and how many experiences you've had with negotiating with a government entity, but never in my lifetime has I negotiated with a government entity and got close to what they said that they would be allowed to get to us. So in light of that fact, I believe that this, and you'd almost call it confiscation without compensation, because you're taking dollars away from our schools and taking dollars away from the state, and essentially, even if you believe that the state should own private land in Colorado, please require the state to compensate the tax rolls, i.e. our schools, with payment in lieu of taxes in place of, and not limit that to, we could pay up to 99.99%, because I interpret that as, if you get 20%, be happy with it and go home. And our schools will lose. I urge a no vote on this until we alter this to where it can actually say that the state has to pay the PILT money. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion of Senate Bill 89? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 89. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Senate Bill 89 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 119. Oh, 119 is... Mr. Kohler, please don't read the title of Senate Bill 119, but do, Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1299.
House Bill 1299, Representative Tyler, also Senator Todd, consider the repeal of the 6-year limitation on applying a salvage grant to a motor vehicle whose cost of being repaired exceeds the value of the vehicle without the recent damage.
Representative Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to present something on the screen and would love to talk to Representative Hollinghorst on this for a moment, if I possibly could. But in the meantime,
Representative Tyler.
I move House Bill 14-1299 and ask for your aye vote. This is a simple bill, very straightforward. It just removes one line from statute that talks about when a car has to have a salvage title. Right now, any car over 6 years old, which crashes, burns, gets crashed, whatever, gets a salvage title. And let me show you two examples of that. If we can move that up just a little bit. Because of the 6-year limit right now, that SUV on top would not get a salvage title. It would have a clean title. The car below would also have a clean title. Members, this is a simple bill for consumer protection so that people know what they're buying. This went into statute maybe 20 years ago when our average fleet age was a lot newer. Now 80% of our cars are over 6 years old, and I think this is a good consumer protection bill. Appreciate your support.
Representative Corum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Tyler, I missed the opportunity to question you in committee. I was off doing another bill, but I'm a little concerned because as a person who has bought not a vehicle, but a trailer, I bought a Pendle hitch trailer that belonged to the BLM. And if you don't know what a Pendle hitch trailer, it's a tongue pull with a round eye that slips over. Anyway, that was torn off. The BLM, in their instant wisdom, decided that this trailer was not salvageable. I bought the trailer, remanufactured the trailer from a Pendle hitch into a gooseneck hitch, which goes up and over, and it meets all the DOT standards. I pulled the trailer now for about 10 years. So I think there's situations where just because it's declared totaled, that it is of value. So I'm concerned that this bill will take some of that away. Also concerned that by doing this, we may be raising our automobile insurance costs because if a vehicle can be declared salvaged and sold out for parts, a lot of people will be able to buy a lot of parts a lot cheaper, but there's also vehicles that are very roadworthy. Once again, in my own situation, I wrecked a Ford Taurus. The insurance totaled it. Damage was not that significant other than there was one factor that did not concern me as the owner, and that was the airbag, and that was about a $2,500 item. I repaired the vehicle. I bought the vehicle back, repaired it, and drove it for several more years simply because it was a good salvage and very roadworthy. So I think in this bill you may be eliminating some bills that are actually roadworthy and at the cost of the consumer, costing insurance premiums to increase.
Representative Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Corum, I think your circumstances speak to something that is outside of what the normal course of business is. You do have the ability to buy a car back from the insurance company and use it on your own for the next 20 years. You do have the ability to cut that hitch off and put on a gooseneck hitch, and I appreciate you being able to do that. I've done some of that work on my old 54 Chevy pickup also. And you could actually apply for a new title if you rebuilt that gooseneck and sold it down the road. But it does not prevent you from making something useful out of a vehicle that had previously been totaled. I have a lot more concern about these vehicles which have clean titles in Colorado under the current law. That's where the issues are. We had a stack of pictures in committee showing another dozen of those automobiles that were pulled off the auction list of the last week or two, which showed them as seriously totaled cars. And that's why I think this is a good bill for consumer protection.
Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Representative Tyler, I did vote for this in committee. I do still have a few questions about it, mainly kind of piggybacking on what Representative Tyler had said. If you have a 12-year-old car and it gets keyed, and the value to repair that car exceeds the value of the car itself, does it necessarily have a salvage brand on that title? I mean, it's still roadworthy, it's still safe, it's just that it's an old car, it's not worth much. And there are a lot of those out on the road right now. And I think the designation needs to be between an unsafe vehicle and a vehicle that's still safe to be on the roads, but is old and just frankly not worth a lot of money.
Representative Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I currently have a brand new car that I love driving. It's a Nissan Leaf, and I haven't stopped in a gas station for 3 months now, which I really enjoy. My previous car was a 2000 Passat, and my insurance agent told me, you know, why on earth would you carry comprehensive on that? You know, a car that old, it doesn't make sense at all. You could get a key across the hood, and they would total it for that. And his point was pretty clear is, you know, don't buy comprehensive coverage on a car that's 10 years old or older because it doesn't make sense for you. You're not going to get that back. To that point exactly, if you, the insurance agent will total the car. If you do not have comprehensive on it, doesn't matter. The insurance company doesn't matter. You can keep driving it forever. Even if the insurance company does total it, you can drive it forever. It just provides for somebody to purchase that car the option to know that it has been totaled by an insurance agent or by the owner themselves if they wanted to do that. So I could see you having this car that had been keyed, driving it for another 5 years, and then selling it to somebody and saying, you know, here's what happened. You can buy this car for $100. No big deal. That's all it's worth now. So, you know, what we're trying to do is protect the consumers from issues like this. And it doesn't prevent you from driving your car as long as you want, whether it's been told by the insurance company or not.
Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Tyler. I appreciate that. But does that car that was keyed, is that title then branded as salvage?
Representative Tyler.
If you keep that car, no. If you give that to the insurance company because they totaled the car and gave you money for it, then they need to brand it as salvage. But you don't have to label that as salvage. You just keep driving that car. You're fine.
Representative Sane. Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Tyler, I wasn't in on the committee. I've got a couple of vehicles in my garage that are 57 years old. What effect does this bill have on those classic vehicles?
Representative Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, as I mentioned, I have a 54 Chevy pickup truck, and I cannot get comprehensive coverage on that. Matter of fact, I can't even figure it out. They call it a 57 Camino, El Camino. So, you know, you're not going to be able to get comprehensive coverage on that. The car collectors have special coverage that you can pay quite an extraordinary amount for, and they come out and inspect the car and look at it, and they will give you an individual policy. So if you've got a 1957 Chevy in that garage, I'd be real interested in seeing it. I owned one of those for a little while. But getting coverage on that would be specialized coverage. And the people that have an interest in that are the car collectors, and they are neutral on this bill. There's a number, as you well know, there's quite a community of old car collectors and rebuilders in this state, and they were neutral on the bill. And we kept asking the question, what difference does that make for what you're doing? Because you really are rebuilding from scratch and creating your own custom vehicle in that respect. This would not have an impact on that.
Representative Corum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you take a vehicle that has cosmetic damage that totals the vehicle, not structural damage to the frame, you're able to buy parts, put that back together, and repaint it. It's roadworthy, it's trustworthy, but it also, under this bill, will carry a salvage title which basically drastically reduces the value of that vehicle, even though it may be more safe than the car next to you that you're on the street. It may have fewer miles. So I just think this is a situation that we're taking a bill that's with good intent and maybe ended up with too many unintended consequences. I actually cannot support this bill.
Representative Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I would say you can drive that car as long as you like, and if you sell it with that title, that you would have to be a buyer beware situation. But if I can ask these to be presented also in rotation up on the screen, you can get an idea of some of the other cars that would fall into this category. This is what we're trying to solve, colleagues, is not, somebody who rebuilds a car or somebody who chooses to drive a car that's been damaged because it's their own vehicle. It's a consumer protection issue that we're talking about here. And here's another car that, again, is not marked as salvage title. It could be cleaned up and sold under a clear title. Here's another one that could be sold under clear title. This is the issue we're dealing with, and you can come up with pretty esoteric conditions for just about anything, but colleagues, this is the issue that this bill deals with. Please vote yes.
Representative Coram.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I think this should be a case-by-case situation where I would agree these vehicles definitely should be totaled, should be marked as salvage. But you could have the same vehicle that went through severe hail damage. It's totaled. It's mechanically sound. Somebody, a young man that's working in, going to a trade school to learn auto body can buy that car, rebuild that car, get a lot of education rebuilding that car, repaint that car, and sell it as a viable vehicle. So I think this is a bill that we just need a little more time on. So I would ask for a no vote.
Representative Peniston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sit on the Transportation Committee, colleagues, and I just wanted to remind everybody that this came out unanimously out of the Transportation Committee, including all the Transportation Committee members that I see up here. So,
is there any further discussion on House Bill 1299? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1299. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 1299 passes. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
You have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Mr. Cole, please read the report of Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, Committee of the Whole begs leave to report as under consideration following attached bills being second reading thereof and makes following recommendations thereon. House Bills 1285 amended, 1290 amended, 1299 passed on second reading in order gross placed on the counter for third and final passage. Senate Bills 89 amended, 102 and 137 passed on second reading in order revised and placed on the counter for third and final passage.
Representative Kagan. You've heard the motion. There are no amendments at the desk. Mr. Cole, please open the machine, and members please vote on adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Representatives Everett, Lawrence, Lebsack, Murray, Szabo, and Wilson. Close the machine. With 62 aye votes, 0 no votes, 3 excused, and 0 absent, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Message from that useless body.
Mr. Speaker, the useless body has adopted transmission.
The message from that body will be printed in the Journal, unfortunately. Introduction of resolutions.
Right. Senate Joint Resolution 16 by Senators Grantham and Nicholson, also Representatives Becker and Wright, concerning the renaming of the tunnels located within Clear Creek County and commonly referred to as the Twin Tunnels as the Veterans Memorial Tunnels.
Senate Joint Resolution, what's the number? 16. We'll lay over kind of under one day, lay over one day under the rules, but we're about to suspend those rules. But let's introduce the other one too.
Senate Joint Resolution 19 by Senators Hodge and Grantham, also Representatives Singer and Buck, concerning the establishment of March 16th as Liberty Day.
Now let's suspend the rules. Madam Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the House suspend the rules for immediate consideration of SJR 16 and SJR 19.
Seeing no objection, the House will suspend the rules for immediate consideration of the resolutions listed by the Assistant Majority Leader, or whatever your title is.
Can we have a brief recess, please?
Yeah, sure. We'll stay at a brief recess. The House will come back to order. Madam Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And
Speaker?
oh, my goodness.
That's the second time. The Majority Leader will be fined $2.
Oh, that's really nice.
She is my Majority Leader. I'm not going to fine her too much.
Thank you for your patience, Mr. Speaker. And I move to lay over SJR 16 until the end of the calendar.
Seeing no objection, and the fact that the Senate never told the sponsors in the House that that resolution was coming today, SJR, what number? 16. 16 will lay over to the end of the calendar. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of the other SJR that we have up.
Senate Joint Resolution 19 by Senators Hodge and Grantham, also Representatives Singer and Buck, concerning the establishment of March 16th as Liberty Day.
Representative Singer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move SJR 14-019 and ask that it be read at length.
Whereas the liberties we have today were established in our founding documents, namely the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution with its Bill of Rights. And whereas James Madison was a contributing author of the Virginia Plan, used during the Constitutional Convention of 1787 as the model for forming a constitution to replace the Articles of Confederation. And whereas, as one of the authors of the essays now known as the Federalist Papers, James Madison helped educate the public about the aims, merits, and context of the new Constitution. And whereas, although sometimes referred to as the father of the Constitution, Madison insisted that the document was not the offspring of a single brain, but the work of many heads and many hands. And whereas, James Madison kept written records of the debates of the Constitutional Convention of 1787, giving us insight into both the impassioned debate and difficult compromise necessary to create and adopt the Constitution. And whereas James Madison served in the United States House of Representatives from 1789 until 1797, during which time he introduced into Congress the Bill of Rights, which was ratified by the states in 1791. And whereas James Madison served as Secretary of State from 1801 until 1809, and as President of the United States from 1809 until 1817. And whereas with his life's work, James Madison helped create the bedrock of liberty this nation was built upon, and in his thoughtful leadership and authorship, we have a blueprint for effective governing. And whereas Sunday, March 16, 2014, is the birthday of James Madison, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that Sunday, March 16, 2014, be proclaimed Liberty Day in Colorado, and that March 2014 be proclaimed Liberty Month in Colorado. Be it further resolved that a copy of this joint resolution be sent to Jane Goff, Elaine Gantz Berman, Deborah Scheffel, Pam Mazanek, Marcia Neal, Angelica Schroeder, Paul Lundeen, Robert Hammond, and Carrie Taylor Markle, the members of the State Board of Education.
Representative Buck, or either one. Singer?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We faked each other out on that one. Members, please be seated. I know it's a Friday afternoon, and unfortunately our Liberty Day, it's a morning. It was a late night last night in committee. Members, I just want to thank you for your indulgence and your time. I know the Liberty Day children are not here right now, but they did get to meet the governor on the steps of the Capitol this morning with Senators Udall and Bennett, and as well as our HUD secretary, who just announced another $100+ million in flood recovery for the state of Colorado. I know you can't clap now, but we'll be clapping in our hearts. I just want to mention one thing. In the resolution, we talk about the fact that it wasn't just one mind; it was many minds that came together. From John Locke and Thomas Paine to George Washington and Thomas Jefferson to James Madison, all of these individuals came together and showed extreme courage in the face of what we can only imagine these days. And I guess we saw a tiny bit of that courage this morning as children bravely read the words of our founding fathers in front of us. But those words still hold true. And I'm just going to reiterate probably the greatest sentence ever written. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I hope we consider those words greatly through the session. I know we'll face times of tribulation between the two chambers here, but there weren't Democrats and Republicans when this nation was founded. And in fact, the first shots were fired almost a year before the Declaration of Independence was even signed. So just like they had a long way to go, we've got a long way to go. But the U.S. Constitution is an amazing document. I go back to it time and time and again and wonder why we can't do that with our Colorado Constitution. I wish I could fit that in my pocket too. And with that, I encourage a yes vote on Senate Joint Resolution 19, and hopefully Representative Buck will join us as well.
Representative Buck.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and I will not ever forget that you are Mr. Speaker. So.
Thank you.
But I have to tell you, I know we're all exhausted. It's Friday, and I know everybody had late nights last night, but I have to tell you, we have to still continue the enthusiasm for what Liberty Day does for our schools, helping the kids understand the Constitution, having the courage to come down here and speak on and read the Constitution to us. So I just am the biggest cheerleader for what Liberty Day does for this body, and just very grateful and absolutely rise in support of 14019 concerning the establishment of March 16th as Liberty Day.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to taking a voice vote? Seeing none, we'll proceed in that matter. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. SJR 19 is passed. Representative Buck.
Mr. Speaker, I ask that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be made co-sponsors of SJR 19.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Buck and Representative Singer. Announcements and introductions. Representative Singer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In case anyone forgot, Representative Court cares a great deal about the Colorado Constitution. Thank you.
And Representative Court this weekend will be reading it at her house, and you're more than welcome to be there while she reads it out loud. It'll take all weekend. Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and excuse me while I move it away from everyone else's setting. The Colorado Stone and Sand and Gravel Association is having a networking event Tuesday, March 18th at the Denver Press Club from 5:30 to 7:30, so I hope you all can make it.
Madam Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, there is a free lunch available to my left in our lunchroom, and there's going to be a grab and go lunch that's sponsored by Planet Sub. They're located on 16th and Grant. Please enjoy the lunch.
Any further announcements or introductions? Madam Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 1 p.m. this afternoon, at which point we will adjourn until Monday, the 17th of March, St. Patrick's Day at 10 a.m.
Seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess. Members, have a great and enjoyable weekend. We'll see you back here Monday at 10 a.m. The House is in recess till 1 p.m.